7:30 a.m. for A View from the Outside, hosted by Brereton Horne. A View from the Outside takes a look at key issues affecting St. Vincent and the Grenadines and gives a global perspective on how these issues are viewed. Host Brereton Horne will examine a variety of topics to enlighten, stimulate debate, and explore solutions. Hear the facts, hear the real-life stories, hear A View from the Outside. Join Brereton Horne at 7:30 a.m. every Saturday on Nice Radio for A View from the Outside.
On A View from the Outside this week being the 29th of February 2020, we look at voice, V-O-I-C-E, voice, with the view being that when a person's voice is taken away, there can be devastating consequences. Therefore, each and every Vincentian needs to be on guard to retain, regain, and protect his or her voice. The Cambridge Dictionary defines voice as an expression of opinion or the right to express your opinion. And the Collins Dictionary states that someone's voice is their opinion on a particular topic and what they say about it. Those definitions tell us that when someone expresses their opinion, that is their voice. The definitions tell us that people have a right to express their voice. They have a right to express their opinion. We, on A View from the Outside, say that no one ought to be put in a situation where they feel that they are losing or they have lost their voice. Research has shown that people generally react, and react badly in most cases, when they feel that their voice is taken away from them. It is with that and the devastating effects of denying someone his or her voice in mind that we, on A View from the Outside, highlight this topic today. It is no secret that when people are denied their voice, the effect on the individual, the effect on the group, the effect on the organization, the effect on a village, the effect on a town, the effect on a nation can be catastrophic. A nation can sink into despair. When people are denied their voice, they can, and most often do, cower away in silence. When people lose their voice, they can, and most often, cower away in fear. When people lose their voice, they sadly think that their will to live is lost. For too long now, too many Vincentians believe that subtle and not so subtle and glaring attempts are made, especially by the regime, to deny them of their voice. Many believe that the current regime in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, its agents and enablers, make a deliberate effort to try to silence or take away the voice of the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The most recent of those attempts is that of the Prime Minister, in what many believe is an effort to silence the people, to take away the voice of the people in respect of the discussion and debate pertaining to the coronavirus. A virus which is wreaking havoc throughout the world. A virus of epidemic proportions, which many professionals say is nearing a pandemic. It is believed by many that in an effort to stifle discussion, in an effort to take away the voice of the people about their concerns in relation to the regime's lackadaisical manner in which they have handled and are handling the coronavirus issue, the Prime Minister, in his response, has resorted to remind the Vincentians that they can go to prison for causing alarm. It must be stated here that we, on A View from the Outside, are fully aware that causing alarm in law is, in fact, an offense punishable by imprisonment, and we do not encourage that kind of behavior. However, it is recognized that when people are starved of crucial and vital information, they panic, and they have a right to debate and demand information from the government or the regime. When people are starved of or denied information, and when people believe that they are being taken for a ride, when they believe that they cannot trust the information given to them, it is human to speculate. It is human to want that information. So, the perceived threat of imprisonment by the Prime Minister, which many believe is an effort to subdue or take away the voice of the people, rather than provide the people with vital information for assurance and peace of mind, must be highlighted and condemned. There are other examples of attempts to take away the voice of the citizens by the regime. Paul Ayman Scrub, the Calypsonian, who sings social commentary and tells it like it is, or tells it like he sees it, was arrested and charged with uttering seditious words and threatening to kill Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves and his family. Charges which many say were contrived, and charges which were later dropped for lack of evidence. During that period, Paul Ayman Scrubs, his voice was subdued at best. Auden Graham, who was one of the most ardent and vociferous supporters of the ruling regime, well, he dared to disagree with them and spoke out about their atrocities. He was charged with sedition. He won his case. However, he had to flee the country. And since then, his voice remains missing. The teacher, Joseph Bowen, was arrested and charged in what many believe was an attempt to silence her on social media, an attempt to take away her voice. The charges against her were later dropped for lack of evidence. Yogi Farrell, the poor, young, aspiring model, bore the brunt of the regime, its agents and enablers, and to a large extent, the state machinery. Her story is well documented and known internationally. Yogi Farrell continues to languish and descend further into despair. It is worth noting that the current regime's attempt to silence Vincentians, to take away their voice, do not necessarily end in or involve arrest and charge. They are said to use their agents and enablers, many who take to the airwaves and or social media in their attempts to drive fear into the Vincentian people. Many people question the disappearance of Mr. Jocelyn, the servant of the Lord of Cane Garden, who was a fierce critic of the regime. He disappeared mysteriously in December 2011. He disappeared without a trace. Since then, his voice is missing completely. The late Glenn Jackson, who was intricately and intimately linked to the regime, one weekend in March 2006, declared that he had a bomb to drop. And by the end of that weekend, on March 6th, 2006, he was killed The question of who mysteriously and permanently silenced his voice is still a mystery. It still remains unanswered. Edgar Cruikshank was an ardent supporter of the regime before he voiced his displeasure with them and vowed to support the opposition. He was mowed down and killed at a political meeting of the said opposition. His voice is lost permanently. Otto Sam, a former teacher who was also credited with assisting the regime into power, dared to show his disagreement. He was illegally transferred and subsequently illegally dismissed. He had to seek redress in court. He won, and it is believed that he is still to be fully compensated. His voice now appears to be a distant memory, a distant voice in Vincentian discourse. Kimberly Cambridge, the psychologist, who, in the face of a mountain of evidence, concluded that we, as Vincentians, cannot pretend that a rape culture does not exist in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The agents and enablers of the regime took to the airways and social media and disparaged and denigrated her in their attempt to take away her voice. Dr. Goodluck, a doctor of many years' experience, who many describe as a thorough professional, he exposed the presence of mold and gave his professional opinion on the effects of mold infestation at the General Hospital. And for that, he was pilloried by the agents and enablers of the regime in their attempt to silence him, in their attempt to take away his voice. Bigger Biggs continues in his struggle with the regime. Every effort is made by them to silence him, to take away his voice. It was declared on their political platform that he has to decide whether he's a businessman or a politician. His multi-million-dollar business remains in ruins at the Rabaca, while there are continuing attempts to confiscate his land there at Rabaca. Lawyers who appear to exhibit a dissenting voice to that of the regime are threatened with exposure of not paying taxes. It appears to many that edicts or fatwas are now issued to stone politicians of opposing views if they mount the political platform, seemingly in an attempt to silence them, seemingly in an attempt to take away their voice. The outgoing Speaker of the House of Assembly recently spoke out about the threats pertaining to leaving the regime, which is said by the leader to be a family, and the efforts to silence Vincentians up and down the country, efforts to take away the voice of Vincentians. One must remember the regime's attempt to silence Nice Radio, the primary outlet of the voice of the opposition. And they've done so through many lawsuits and the threat of lawsuits. It must be mentioned also that there are many Vincentians up and down the country who slink away and cower for fear of losing their job or because of concern of being subjected to other forms of victimization. Their voice is taken away from them. Time and space do not permit us to mention each and every instance. However, we, here on A View from the Outside, encourage each and every listener, each and every Vincentian, each and every one of you to identify the examples of attempts to take away the voice of Vincentians, your voice. Identify those instances. Make the effort not to allow them to take away your voice or the voice of your fellow Vincentians. Do not allow yourself to be bribed into silence with the promise or offer of a job or with anything else. Do not let anyone use a scholarship or assistance to university to take away your voice. We encourage you to use your opportunity to attend university to become a critical thinker, where you're not afraid to ask the hard questions and make inquiries into corruption, lack of accountability, and the other ills which are plaguing the country. Use your voice to help yourself and others to gain their voice. Martin Luther King Jr. recognized and spoke out about the importance of the church having an effective voice and not an ineffectual voice to defend those in authority. The late Winnie Mandela, who survived the brutality of apartheid in South Africa, knew of the importance of having a voice, a united voice. She encouraged her people not to lose their voice. And despite the brutality of the apartheid regime, she encouraged them to use their collective voice as a bargaining force to chart their own destiny. Vincentians, we, on A View from the Outside, encourage each and every one of you to learn from history, learn from the teachings of others. We encourage you to shed the veil and help yourself to have a voice, because we have all seen the devastating effects when people feel that their ability to speak has been taken away from them, when they feel that their voice is stifled and snuffed out. And as you do all of that, we encourage you to bear in mind the words of Harry S. Truman, the 33rd President of the United States of America, when he addressed Congress on the 8th of August 1950 and warned, and I quote, "Once a government is committed to the principle of silencing the voice of opposition, it has only one way to go, and that is down the path of increasingly repressive measures until it becomes a source of terror to all its citizens and creates a country where everyone lives in fear." Vincentians, take warning. Vincentians, pay heed. Until next week, Randy and all of the listeners, this is Brereton Horne with A View from the Outside, with a reminder to send your feedback as usual to aviewfromtheoutside@hotmail.com. We also invite you to visit and like our Facebook page at A View from the Outside, and also to visit and subscribe to our YouTube channel at JMB Horne.